So I am Tori Duval. I am the Outreach Education Program Manager for the Friends of the WNC Nature Center.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hello, welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. Y'all, I am on a bit of a streak right now that I'm thoroughly enjoying, which is that we're doing some interviews from some new facilities, some new places, and some new faces for the podcast. And this is a really special one. And I know I say that every week, but hey, I wouldn't be doing what I do if I didn't love all this stuff. But there's a reason that this is a special place that I'm bringing you, despite the whole, like, it's an awesome facility and there are cool people and amazing animals there, part of it, which is kind of always how it is, in my opinion. But yeah, so that reason and what makes this so cool to me is that way back in season 1, we had Jamie Delk on, who is one of my favorite people I've ever met in this industry. And Jamie at the time was working at Woodland Park Zoo. And as we were chatting, she told me that she had, early in her career, worked at a place in Western North Carolina called the WNC Nature Center. And she was like, John, you have to have them on the podcast. They are amazing. And I was like, okay, cool. I need ins at places right now. And people don't know who the heck I am. So maybe you could help me. And she goes, no, you don't understand. You have to go there. It's such a special place. They have such a cool way of figuring out what animals to have and knowing what they can do with relatively limited space and all of that. And she was like, you have to go there and experience the magic. And while I do spend a lot of time in North Carolina, y'all know that, getting to Western North Carolina from the places that I hang out, like Raleigh and Durham and of course Greensboro and all that stuff, it's a bit of a trek, and it's just not an area that touring has ever taken me to or anything like that. But the last time that I was in North Carolina was when I was playing down in Theater Raleigh. I said to myself, you know what? I don't care how much of a drive it is. I don't care if it's going to add a crazy day to my already crazy existence. I need to make this trek. I have been dreaming about this for a couple of years now. And so I reached out to the team at the WNC Nature Center, and they could not have been more accommodating. And so, yeah, I got to go out and I got to experience this place. And y'all, Jamie was right. There is something about this facility that is just not going to be communicated in this interview. And that is, of course, not to say anything negative about my guest, Tori Duval, who is incredible and has an amazing story to share with y'all, or about my own abilities as an interviewer. It's just that this place sparkles. It's magical. You walk around a corner and it's like you're in nature and you don't see any habitats. And then you turn another corner and there are some red pandas, which is pretty special. And I don't know, that kind of thing just happens a lot there. And it's a facility that's constantly upgrading, constantly getting to even, higher standards and even better levels than it was already at when it was amazing to begin with. So I highly recommend that anytime y'all are anywhere near the western end of North Carolina, take some time and make the trek, and you'll hear more about why in this interview. But it is definitely definitely a special place. So before we get to the interview, just really quick, I just wanted to remind y'all to make sure that you hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Make sure you follow along on the socials at Rossifari everywhere, except for the TikTok machine where we're at Rossifari Pod, all those good things. And so without further ado, here is my interview with Tori Duval of the WNC Nature Center.
And we are here at the WNC Nature Center, the Western North Carolina Nature Center in Asheville, North Carolina.
Which I assume is in the western part of North Carolina.
It is nestled in the mountains.
It is beautiful out here. Driving to this place, I'm always amazed at facilities. And there are ones that are huge. There are ones that are small. It doesn't matter. That you go to them, and until you're there, you're like, oh, there's no way there's a zoo here. There's no way there's a facility here. And that this is one of them. I'm driving. I'm like, okay, I'm in the mountains. Okay, I'm at a soccer field. Oh, there's a sign for a red panda. That's exciting.
Suddenly we just pop into focus.
Yes. So the first thing that I wanted to do was just tell you how excited I am to be here. And part of the reason why is that many, many years ago, there was a keeper who worked here named Jamie Delk. And Jamie then ended up going to Woodland Park Zoo and then moving to Texas. And it was many, many, many moons ago. But when I spoke to her on the podcast, she was like, so have you ever heard of the WNC Nature Center? And I was like, I have not, because at the time I had not. And she pushed me so hard. She was like, you need to go, you need to have them on. And then she goes, but, and I'm going to be really specific here, you can't just do it as a Zoom interview. The place is magical. You need to go. So here we are a couple years later, but I'm finally in Western North Carolina. And so I'm finally here and I'm really excited about that. And I think it speaks highly to the facility that a former keeper is like bragging on y'all.
Absolutely.
You know, that's really cool. So, I usually start off by talking about like you, but I'm confused by something that you said, which is friends of the WNC Nature Center. And I mean, like, don't get me wrong, it's cool that you guys are friends, but what does that actually mean and what is the distinction?
Sure. So the difference is that the WNC Nature Center is owned by the city of Asheville, and that's actually why you saw soccer fields on the way here in a little park as well. So we're on city property right now, so we actually share a space with the Parks and Rec building as well. They're right down the road.
Nice.
And I work for the Friends of the Nature Center, which is the nonprofit that helps to support the Nature Center.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so because they're a government facility, there are certain things that they can't do, especially with fundraising and stuff like that. So the Friends are responsible for all of the development and fundraising side of things. We also run our membership program, so the memberships to the WNC Nature Center, which are reciprocal with other AZA facilities, which is always wonderful. That's all done through the Friends. We run the gift shop, and then we also, our mission is to enrich the mission of the Nature Center. And in that way, we have a very small education team here on site, and they work very hard with all of the schools and visitors that come on site, and they don't have the time to go off site. So that's something else that we do. That's what I am in charge of, is our programs that travel to libraries and schools and retirement facilities and anyone else in the community who's interested in having us.
Okay, that's very cool and very interesting. Yeah, I'm always... we were talking a little before we started recording about how I get all these different perspectives on all these different facilities. And the government-run or government co-run ones are the ones that are the most interesting because they're all different, but then they're different at different levels because you've got the government side is going to be different everywhere, whether it's local, whether it's state, whatever. And each one of those areas is going to be different. And then you've got the actual zoo, which, like I mentioned, is always different. So it is, it's really interesting to me to see, you know, I love Brandywine Zoo in Delaware. Mm-hmm. Every time that we want to do an interview, it takes about 9 months to get approval, and that's fine, and that's cool. And I work with them, and it happens. It just, you have to plan ahead.
Yep.
And other times it's like you reach out, and it's like you get Bob at, you know, whatever, govern.gov, and they're like, yeah, come on by.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
We're more of the latter.
Yes, but not quite that lax. But no, it was very chill, and it was a very good process to get here. So Why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got here and like growing up, were you always interested in animals and what was your education like and all that stuff?
Sure. So I am from Massachusetts.
Okay.
And we moved down here in 2000. I was about 10 years old. So, now that just tells my age. And I always loved animals, but I was not interested in doing environmental education at all. And I went to college at UNC Asheville for creative writing. I was going to be a writer. And then had to take I didn't like science at the time. And had to take a science credit just to graduate. So my freshman year, I took an introduction to environmental science and fell in love with it and changed my major.
Nice.
So changed my major to ecology and environmental biology. And my senior year of college, I did an internship here at the Nature Center and absolutely fell in love with it. I had volunteered here in the past, but loved the internship. I worked directly with the animals. I was like, this is really cool. This is very cool. And then I went on and did an internship at the Cradle of Forestry in Pisgah Forest. And I did just environmental education with no animals. And I was like, oh, this is really cool too. And it would be very cool if these two things were mixed together. So an AmeriCorps position opened up for the Friends of the Nature Center.
Okay.
And it was to create an outreach program. So in 2016, there was no outreach program. They just didn't really have the ability. They traveled offsite occasionally, but it wasn't something that they were doing regularly. So I was brought on as an AmeriCorps member for a 6-month term, started the outreach program, it was very successful, and we were able to apply for grant funding, and I have been here ever since.
Sick. That's so cool. You built this baby up yourself.
I did. It's my baby.
Love it. That's so good. Can you explain a little bit about how AmeriCorps works? Because I don't really know, to be honest. I mean, just like surface level stuff.
Yeah, no,
I have
AmeriCorps is a fantastic program. I always tell young professionals it's a wonderful way to get into fields that you're interested in. So you're not technically an employee, but you're not a volunteer. You're a service member. So you do get paid a stipend.
Okay.
It's not like getting a huge, big salary, but you do get paid a stipend.
Unlike when you start working at zoos.
You make the real money as a zookeeper. A lot of times housing is included, which is really nice. Okay. And sometimes there'll be like meal stipends and things like that. But the nice thing with AmeriCorps, it's a set time period. Usually it's 10-month terms. You get experience in education or volunteerism. There's a couple different routes that you can take. And then when you're finished, you get the Education Award. And the Education Award is the big reason why I think AmeriCorps is so valuable, because you can use that towards student loans or towards paying for additional schooling. And it's usually a good chunk of money. That's actually how I finished paying off my student loans, was through the AmeriCorps Education Award.
Nice. Yes. That's really exciting. That's very cool. So, okay, so they're like, hey, there's this place, this WNC Nature Center, and we want to do this outreach program. And you're like, I got you. And then you get here on the first day, and you're like, what do I do? Tell me what you did.
Yeah. So I learned a lot very quickly. Spent a lot of time walking around the grounds. Luckily, I had familiarity, which was nice.
So your job was, just to clarify early on, to go to the zoo.
My job was to go to the zoo. Not a bad job at all. Not a bad job.
Anyway,
get to know the animals.
Right. That's tough.
Learn how to handle some of the animals, which was the worst part, let me tell you.
Did it again.
I hated it.
Hit my dang mic again. Yeah, no, I feel free. I really apologize that you had to go through that. That's tough.
And then the actual most complicated part is creating the curriculum. So when you go to a zoo and you go to like a talk, someone's holding a snake and they're telling you about the snake and everything like that, it can look very easy. It's supposed to look easy, but there's a lot that goes into it behind the scenes, or if you're seeing a school program, there's a lot that goes into it to make sure that you're reaching the standards that particular age group is supposed to be learning in school. There's a lot that goes into curriculum creation, which is just sitting at a desk, looking at a computer, doing a lot of lesson plan designing. So I did a lot of that because we didn't have anything created for this program. And then I started learning how to do marketing, which I had no experience with, and reaching out to schools and libraries and saying, hey, we do this. It's new. We'd love to come to you.
So let's dive into that a little bit. I feel like in the last bunch of years, I've had a bunch of, educators and ambassador animal type keepers on and everything, and people that do these programs, but we've never really talked. It's always just kind of been accepted that there is this program, there are these materials, and then we build from there. So what is it like? Like, how do you even go and figure out what, what is age appropriate and what facilities like schools and stuff are looking for? What's that first step like to know like where to begin?
There's a couple different ways that you can look at it. One way is you can, for North Carolina specifically, you can go and look at the North Carolina state standards for public schools, and they will break it down for every different type of science, what the kids are learning that year. So like, for example, second graders, let me tell you, pollinators and metamorphosis. Ooh, do we talk about some caterpillars in second grade? That is the whole focus of second grade. A lot about metamorphosis and things like that with that particular branch of science.
Right.
So that's one way to do it, is to determine just the general overall needs. Something else that's important is the reason that they requested this AmeriCorps position to start this outreach program was because the community had come to them. They were getting many, many requests for specific programs.
That's so cool.
At schools. Exactly. Yeah. So they were filling a need in the community.
Right.
And the goal of the outreach program is to reach people who can't come to the Nature Center. So schools have very limited field trip budgets, and oftentimes transportation is the biggest issue for schools. So getting school buses or bus drivers as well is a really, really big problem. So that's a barrier that we wanted to remove. As you have mentioned, we are in the mountains, and we are paved. The Nature Center has paved trails. We are ADA accessible. We are stroller accessible, but we are also in the mountains, so we have hills. It is not a flat space. So it can be really difficult for certain individuals to move around at the Nature Center, so we wanted to be able to bring our programs to them as well. So we specifically went to the community to fill the needs that they were telling us that they had.
All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
Hi, this is Kathy Hill from the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. We're all about restoration projects in progress this season on One Lagoon, One Voice. Learn about the great strides the lagoon community is taking to restore and protect the Indian River Lagoon. Each week, we dive deep into discussions with scientists, resource managers, and nonprofit leaders to explore lagoon issues and solutions. From oyster reefs to clam restoration, algae blooms to muck, you'll learn all about the projects we're tackling to bring the Indian River Lagoon back to health. Click the link in the show notes to follow One Lagoon, One Voice, learn about the IRL Council, and explore our unique lagoon.
That's really cool. That's awesome. I create things. I have written a show and I'm writing other shows and stuff, and it's different than educational stuff, but that same thing of trying to figure out what I want to do, because there is, and especially coming from a creative writing background, there is, even to educating, there is an artistic element to it. Mm-hmm. And wanting to do what you want to do, but then also figuring out the need is like the hardest thing for me when I start, where is the intersection of, I'm writing a show about the guys at Sun Records, like we just performed here in North Carolina and Raleigh. And where is the intersection of people who like Elvis Presley and want to hear more about it, and me, who has been to Sun Records and friends with some of these guys before they passed away and stuff, and want to tell every story and make it a 4-hour magnum opus where we occasionally play a song, but it's mostly me talking about all this stuff that I know. I find finding that balance to be so hard. I'm like literally jealous as you're saying this. I'm like, I wish there was like an audience analysis place where I could go and be like, oh, they want to hear about this. Cool. And the fact that they were asking for it is really like magical to me, because I'm like, oh God, what do people want?
I was ready to info dump for them, so they just had to say the word.
So, okay, you've mentioned that you go to these places. You've mentioned libraries and I think schools and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. How does that work? Like, how do you figure out what animals you're going to take? How do you transport them? How do you figure out, are there keepers that are specifically trained for this? Are they keepers? Are they presenters? Are they both? Like, break down, if we're going to bring you to my library that I'm opening down the street here, what are you offering us?
Yeah. So all of our traveling programs involve meeting an animal, with the exception of like long tabling events, because it's just too much stress for the animals. What we do is we work right now with reptiles and amphibians. So we travel with herps and we work with our herp keeper. So our reptile and amphibian keeper, her name is Jill Sharp. She's fantastic.
Nice.
Truly gifted at working with these lovely little creatures. And she is ultimately in charge of we call them ambassador animals. She's ultimately in charge of their care. And then we also, on our education team, have our animal ambassador coordinator. So she's in charge of scheduling like training sessions for new staff members and making sure that everyone's cleared on handling different animals, and coordinates with Jill to work on our log. So we have essentially a checkout log.
Nice.
Yeah, our vet likes to err on the side of keeping our animals very, very comfortable and not stressing them out, which is excellent. So we have very specific rules about our animals don't get handled 2 days in a row. So if they did a program yesterday, they're not doing one today. So all of that goes into the log so that we know who's available. And then, of course, when you're working with something like snakes, nobody wants to pick up a snake right after they've been fed. It's a very bad idea.
Yes.
So that gets put in there so we know like all the different feeding days so we're not handling anybody and having any terrible accidents. So that all gets coordinated through Chrissy Cochran, who's our ambassador coordinator on the education team, and then Jill, who is our keeper for the herps.
Okay, very cool. That's great. And how long has programming going now, you said?
Since 2016,
Yeah,
which is wild to think about. So it's almost 8 years.
And how often do you get to do things?
Ooh, it depends on the season.
Sure.
As educators know, there's definitely a busy season. So this time of year, we're doing outreach programs, like 1 to 2 times a week would be average. We're also doing our premium program. So I am in charge of all of our like behind the scenes tours here at the Nature Center and private tours as well. In the summer, we are between 5 and 6 days a week doing outreach programs, oftentimes multiple times a day.
Wow.
Yes. So the program exploded over the last few years, and I actually was able to hire another educator for outreach. Last year, he started in March, and he's full-time as well. So he's just about a year.
Is there any better feeling than like, oh, look, I've created a job. Like, this is so cool. This person's working because of me, right? Yeah, I know. I love that feeling so much. Very cool. So I'm so fascinated by all of this, honestly, because it's like the idea of taking the zoo to people that maybe won't come here is just really, really important. It's such a great outreach. I have like 30 questions going through my head at once. But I guess one thing I'm wondering is, if you don't mind speaking to this, what are the financials of this? You know, is this something where it's a profitable thing? Is it something that it's just a service that's offered? Is it somewhere in between the two? Again, everyone listening knows you're not getting rich off of this, but you know, how does that all work?
Well, it's not for profit, that's for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, and I'm very, very grateful that the executive director of the Friends sees the value in the program, because the program does not pay for itself. So we do bring in some money, but our programs are designed to be affordable, so they are $2 a participant.
Are you kidding me?
I know.
That's amazing.
And then if it's more than 50 miles from the Nature Center, we do have a travel fee, but if it's 50 miles or less, there is no like additional travel fees or anything.
Oh, come on.
So we try to keep it really
amazing.
affordable. It's really just, it's one of those things where like if there's a small cost associated with it, it gives that value to the program. And you know, like it's one of those like people are more likely to show up if they paid for something, even if they paid $5 for something.
Yeah.
So we do try to keep it very low cost. We also, if someone reaches out to us and says, hey, we would love to do this, but we don't have any funding, 9 times out of 10, I just go there, which is fine. So it does not bring in money. The premium programs do, which is excellent. So those behind the scenes tours and those private tours, those are designed to bring in some funding. But the majority of our funding comes from grants. So that is something else that I work on, is I'm in charge of applying for grants to help support the outreach program so we continue to do what we do. Luckily, it's pretty desirable. So, you know, grantors will look at a program like this. We're reaching a lot of populations who aren't able to have these opportunities otherwise, and they see the value in the program.
How do you learn what grants are out there?
But that's a whole other podcast.
I mean, that's fair, but this is I hear this a lot. People are like, yeah, we get grants, and it's always rolled over, and it's always just like, yeah, so we got a grant, and now we have blah, and like, is there like grants.com where you can go and
essentially, yes,
really,
yeah.
Okay.
So there are, and there's a few different types of grants. So like if you're looking more at like government grants, those can be very, very lucrative, but they also often require a large amount of reporting. So it's important when you're looking at grants to take into consideration not just the scope of the work for the grant, but also the scope of reporting all the work that you've done that is required to get the money. Because sometimes that can be very labor intensive.
Fair.
But yes, I always recommend starting out local and then expanding your search from there. So the city of Asheville and Buncombe County, that's the county that we're in, both offer grants to local facilities. And then you can look at statewide grants. And you can also, if you have, I do not have a fundraising background, but we have a development director and she's excellent. And she can go out and talk directly to community members and businesses and they'll support the program as well.
That's really cool. I'm kind of amazed, I guess. I feel like it's so lost in today's ickiness climate. I'm not even calling it a political climate because it's so beyond that. It's just there's so much negativity and so much ickiness, so I'm sticking with it, out there that like I think it's easy to forget that there's so many individuals and companies and people just out there that are willing to help and are willing to do that kind of thing. And yeah, a cynic may say that a company is going to do it because it's a tax write-off. And I mean, that's not entirely untrue. Yeah. But hearing that this entire program is basically charity, like that's really astonishing and really cool. And honestly kind of gives me like the warm fuzzies a little bit. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's really cool. And it's been running for a while now and is successful and is able to have multiple staff members and I know.
That's the most exciting thing.
I know. I feel like most people listening, if you haven't had the experience where you create something and then are able to employ people that you care about, this might sound weird to you, but those listening, most of you know that I'm literally here right now because of a show that I created and have been touring around and took to Raleigh. And I was sitting on stage the very first night, and I looked across 4 of my best friends in the world who I'm paying good money to do something we all love together. And that meant more to me than that I was drumming or that I was going to get to go to Greensboro and North Carolina Zoo and then here and all of that stuff. It's just an amazing feeling.
It's magical.
I saw you light up as soon as you said it, and I was like, this is worth talking about.
I'm also just a huge fan of the other educator, Brian Wirtz. He's incredible. Very, very proud that we snagged him and we were able to keep him. So yes, I love that we were able to expand the program.
That's so cool. Okay, so you said you've got herps, but what herps do we got?
So we currently teach with black rat snakes and corn snakes, and I'm a huge snake fan.
Yeah, me too.
Hands down, favorite animal to teach with.
Nice.
for herps. And then we have box turtles, which are the state reptile of North Carolina.
Oh, I
Important
love
little
box
turtle.
so much.
Yep, they're
so
very
good.
special. And we also do gray tree frogs and American toads, which is another one of my favorite herp species.
Okay.
I'm a big toad fan.
Nice.
Underrated animal for sure.
Yeah, no, they're great. They're very, very cool. So that's a great little collection. Yeah. And let's talk about some individuals. I assume you get to know the individuals pretty well. So let's start with box turtles because I love box turtles.
Okay. So we have technically 4 box turtles that we teach with, but only 3 of them travel. Okay. One of them is too small. He's still technically a baby. He's only a couple years old. You'll get to see him.
Sorry, that I like baby box turtles a lot.
Oh, they're so precious. He doesn't even have his little hinge yet. Like he's young.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
His name just for now is Yellow Dot. So he's actually, he has a yellow dot on him. He's part of what we call our Head Start program. So he and another box turtle were found in like a disturbed nest site in a construction area, and they were brought to us. They have no physical injuries, so the goal is that they'll Head Start here for a few years and then be released into the wild.
Right. Amazing.
Most of the animals that live here are here because they're either permanently injured or were kept as pets or they were born in other zoos and they're not going to be released. So he's a special little one. But the other box turtles that we have Red, who is probably our most famous box turtle. He's been an ambassador animal for a very long time, longer than I've been here, and he's met thousands of kids.
Amazing.
And he is active. He cruises around a lot. He's a very mobile turtle. And then we have Mayberry, who's our biggest turtle. She's very large, especially for a female. And we have Rosa, who is our other female turtle, and those two live together, and they're visible to the public.
Okay.
And most of our herps are. Red lives behind the scenes.
See, that was going to be my next question, actually, once we got through the animals, was like, are they exhibit animals and, off-exhibit animals?
They are, and that didn't used to be the case.
Okay.
So when I started here, all of our ambassador animals lived behind the scenes, and a lot of that was due to quarantine reasons.
Okay.
Because we let people, touch our animals under supervised situations. And ever since COVID, we've actually stopped doing animal touching, and we just chose not to go back to that. So now our herps are able to be part of the main herp collection. They're visible to the public, and we don't need to separate them from the non-traveling animals because there's no quarantine issues.
It makes sense. Now, I'm curious, and we'll get back to some of the individual personalities, but, touching animals is a pretty popular thing. What was the decision like to, making that decision to not go back to it? And what has the impact on the presentations been?
All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
What if I told you scientists discovered 100 new species in the deep ocean?
Why did crocodiles survive extinction?
Megalodon. How did it go extinct?
Hey, it's me, Forrest Galante, wildlife biologist. You might know me from Joe Rogan's podcast or my various TV shows like Extinct or Alive and Shark Week. Join me and my friends as we dive into the wild world of animal anomalies and everything wildlife. Don't miss out. Click here to uncover these mind-blowing animal mysteries.
It's an excellent question. It was a very long decision process. So there was a really big discussion in this room, actually, with our education team, and then also with our animal curator and our veterinarian who's on staff as well. And it was decided that for sanitation reasons, there were going to be some very strict sanitizing before and after type things that were going to require 2 educators during an animal touching program. And that was that's not something that we're really able to do on a regular basis since we are such a small team. We're not always able to have 2 educators during a program.
Sure.
And it was also determined that we likely would not go back to doing touching for offsite programs at any point, even with hand sanitizing before and after. And that was a vet decision. And because of that, we just decided, we want to keep it the same. So if we're not going to do it offsite, we're not going to do it onsite as well. So we just make sure that we always have biofacts with us. So if we're bringing in a turtle, we have a real box turtle shell. If we're bringing out a snake, we have snake shed. And we're still giving them something to touch, something to interact with, and engaging the other senses as well. So we do some really cool activities with smelling, which is really fun.
Okay.
Yep. We don't smell the live animals.
Right,
I'm not holding them
right.
under the kids' noses or anything weird like that.
Sure.
But we talk a lot about using all of the different senses to experience, aside from taste, to experience the animals.
Good catch.
No one's licking anything.
You do have toads. I don't know. That's really interesting. And has there been have you noticed any reduction in interest or anything? Or
we haven't. We
That's
definitely,
awesome.
People who come here regularly, especially at the beginning, they would ask oh, can we touch? And we still get those questions fairly regularly. But as soon as we just say, we're not going to do any touching, we want to make sure that, we're staying healthy, the animal is staying healthy. We've never had an issue of someone pushing back on that.
Cool. That's
because
great.
really it all does come down to animal welfare. And generally people who are attending these programs care about the welfare of our animals.
It makes such a huge difference when it's that reason. And I've seen a lot. And I have seen at different facilities, and when I've been doing things, people being turned off by that and but I wanna, but it's the very small minority. And that's very cool. I like that. It's actually really cool to hear that you were able to transition from touching to not touching and not have it have an impact,
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that a lot. So, okay, let's talk about some snakes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we actually have 3 of each right now. So we have 3 corn snakes and 3 black rat snakes.
Nice.
The corn snakes are funny because 2 of them are brothers. Their names are Kettle and Caramel. Thank you. And they are nearly impossible to tell apart unless we have a picture on the back of their habitat, and it's 5 spots down from the neck. And 5 spots down, one of them has a complete spot and one of them has a broken spot. They're the exact same size. Their faces look exactly the same. Their personalities are really similar. So it's not like you can tell like one is really active, one isn't. They're just like little twins, except for these spots. So that's how we tell them apart, which is so funny.
That's amazing.
And then there's Ginger, who is just the queen of the habitat.
I could literally tell by how you said her name. Your eyes went up. You're like, Ginger.
And then there's Ginger.
This is the story.
And she is stunning. She's a gorgeous corn snake. You can tell her apart. She's got a different, like, deepness, richness to her color. And she's incredible. They all have very relaxed personalities, which is excellent for education. They're all very, very calm for the most part. Calm, easy to handle. When you start training on snakes, we start with the corns because they're usually easier than the black rat snakes.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then tell me about the black
And then,
rat snakes.
we have our black rats. So we have 2 fairly small female black rats whose names are Reg and Fussy. And they're about, I want to say like maybe 4 feet or so long. So they're not huge for a black rat. And they both can be a little spicy. They both come out for programs. We haven't had any issues or anything with them, but they just tend to be a little bit wigglier, and they take a little bit more practice just getting used to their body movements and their body language. And then there is Birch, who is not that I should say this, but my absolute favorite snake.
You have to admit you have favorites.
I have a favorite, and it's Birch, and everyone knows it, so I don't know why I act like it's a secret.
Everybody does on the podcast, and I always say I have this rule. You have to say the truth. I've never met a keeper who doesn't have favorites. They might change over time.
Right.
But yeah, no, that's,
Birch is my all-time favorite. He's huge. He's about 6.5 feet long.
Nice.
And he is just a character. I don't know. There's just something about him. I love working with him. I also love working with him just for the sake that he's the easiest animal to see because he's so big. So when we're doing large programs where there's like 60 or 70 kids in a room, at a big library or something, they can see him.
Right.
As opposed to bringing something like a toad. And I love the toads. But, when you're the size of like a small apple, it's harder to see from up front.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's funny. That's really cool. I like snakes. I like snakes a lot. When people tell me that they are afraid of snakes, it greatly confuses me. And I get it. I used to be an arachnophobe. I actually worked through those issues on the podcast, including handling a tarantula for the first time while recording. And now I'm quite comfy with them. And I'll have them like run around on me and I'm fine. I've held a few now. And then recently held a scorpion, which then tried to run up my arm and was a little less successful. Like it was fine. I was fine. But I was still like, okay, I wasn't scared, but I have a healthy respect for all of the things, the stings and the claws and the speed.
You got a lot going on.
I knew tarantulas were fast. I did not think scorpions were fast until it started to haul up me. And I'm pretty sure I heard war cries. So I'm just saying, I think it was just the individual. I'm not afraid of the species. You've mentioned a bunch of names so far. Yeah. And I'm on a mission.
Okay.
And that is, I don't know if you're on the Facebook group, the Zoo Staff Facebook group that exists. No, okay.
I don't have a Facebook.
Okay, cool. But there's a lot of discussion and a lot of debate about names. And I think it's a really healthy conversation. I am a big believer that empathy and connection is the most important way that you're going to have conservation success, especially at a zoo. Like it just, you're not out in the wild bumping into things. And so I am working as hard as I can to get everyone's opinion, whether I agree or not, on names and the names of animals and what impact they have. And so as an educator who is out there sharing these really adorable names with the public, I would love to hear your take on that.
That's a big question. I mean, the bigger question in general of empathy without too much,
anthropomorphism.
Exactly. Which is a hotly debated topic in the zoo world. And every zoo is a little bit different on where they draw that line.
Yep.
So I am a big believer in the power of names, of animal names, for individuals to make connections. So they remember when they meet a turtle and his name was Red and he had bright red eyes. That's an excellent connection. It is also an education piece because male box turtles have red eyes and female box turtles have brown eyes.
Yes.
So we try, it's not always the case, but we try with our ambassador animals to give them a name that has some sort of connection to an education piece so that it's a nice little like take home and memory of like why that animal was named that. But in a broader sense, not so much with herps, but with a lot of other animals, particularly mammals. There's a lot of evidence that they recognize their names, and it's very important for training purposes. And that's what our curators would say.
It drives me crazy when facilities change names of like well-known animals. And this, I get it. It's a big donation usually. I understand that I do to a point, but one of the things that I keep harping on here, and just as I talk to people privately, is like, I know literally of a facility that changed an animal that was like, Insta famous, changed the name.
Wow.
People stopped 2 bus trips that they were going to plan to go visit that one. And they were like, oh, I'm mad at this place now. People like unfollowed, like it was a thing, And it wasn't a huge number, but again, it's the passionate people that you really want to take care of. And there's another facility that I know of that changed the name. And for months, anytime they would post the animal and say the new name, it was just comment after comment of, no, it's this name, it's this name, it's this name. And I was just like, oh, you made so many people mad.
Yeah.
And the reason they were mad wasn't just their empathy and their connection with that animal. It's, what's it called? Parasocial relationship, but it is a relationship and it matters. But also, like you were saying, it's the training thing. A lot of the people weren't upset because, and again, I'm not going to say the actual name, but you changed Bob's name to Joe. Whatever. It's, wait, you changed Bob's name to Joe, but Bob knows his name. And like, I've seen trainers call Bob and Bob comes over, and you can get into the anthropomorphism there. And does Bob know his name, or does Bob think that Bob is the call to bring him over? Okay, there's a lot of nuance there.
There is.
But also to the public, that doesn't matter. And there has to be that realization to a point. I like to say I'm a bigger fan of anthropomorphism than a lot of people, because I think it builds a connection to a certain point. And then at a certain point, you completely lose me. But like, if somebody says to me, I've heard people say that you shouldn't say that this red panda's favorite snack is grapes, because the word favorite is a very human thing. And I hear you. And I respect that. I'm not going to like argue about that.
Yeah.
But also, if there is a red panda that you offer numerous treats over months, years, and the keepers always say, okay, grapes are the highest value. If I'm training with them, I'm going to use grapes when I'm doing a new training, and then we'll back it off to bananas when, we're just reinforcing the thing they've already learned. The word for that is favorite. And it's maybe they don't speak English, so they don't understand that, but I'm comfortable with saying the word favorite there because there is like evidence that what we use for the word, you know what I mean?
Right.
At the same time, it can go to weird places.
It can. And that's something we're actively discussing actually right now as a team is, where do we, what words are we using? What words are we not using? Favorite has come up.
I think it's
where
really
do we,
interesting.
where do we draw the line while making sure that we encourage that empathy, because there are scientific studies that show how important that is.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah. So I have used the word favorite before. I don't use it often. I might say preference. It depends on the age of the group as well. Because if you use the word preference for 4-year-olds, it's not an ideal way. You can't go into a group of toddlers and be like, well, they seem to strongly prefer that, like, they just want to know what's the favorite.
Right, yeah.
But we stray away from saying things like, oh, this animal loves that enrichment. That's very anthropomorphizing.
Yes, that's where you start to get to a weirder place.
Exactly.
I agree with that, yeah.
So it is a little bit of a tightrope, and there can be some gray areas for sure.
Yeah, I always find it fascinating. But for me, and again, let me remind you of my deep, history in this industry, which is that I'm a drummer. But as somebody who I think the value of it all to me is that I didn't love red pandas at first, right? Now, they are my favorite animal. To the point where when I went to the Philadelphia Zoo, which is where I fell in love with a red panda, at the time, there were 2 red panda exhibits. I walked past the first one where I saw Coombe and Spark hanging out and was like, oh, they're cute, whatever. Went to the next exhibit, and that's where Maylin lived. And I don't know what it was about Maylin to this day, but she broke me. And I would go visit her. And I would run past the other pandas, who, by the way, I also ended up falling in love with over time, but I needed to go see my girl. And when I talked to her keeper for the first time, and I found out her name, and I found out that she preferred bamboo to biscuits, and I found out that she preferred her female keepers to her male keepers, and that she was sassy with the male keepers and very sweet with the female keepers, I now understood who Maylin was in a way that I had never taken the time to understand an animal at a zoo before, even though I was obsessed with zoos and going a lot.
Yeah.
They became my favorite animal. I have a stuffed animal named Red who travels with me everywhere. I volunteer for Red Panda Network. So many episodes of my podcast are about red pandas. As a matter of fact, when Jamie asked me if I'd heard of the place, she goes, what's wrong with you? They have red pandas.
We have red
It was like the first, she was like offended that I didn't know that this was a facility just because y'all have red pandas.
Which at some point we'll have to talk about why we have red pandas. But please carry on.
I'm very excited to share that story again. Yes, no, because I know it. Yes. So I think like that is why this podcast exists. You know, red panda number 3, who just sits there, isn't why Rossifari exists, but Maylin, who has all those traits, you know, and who I knew has her favorites. And when I would see her getting biscuits and bamboo and go right to the bamboo, I'd be like, oh, that's her. And you could say preference, you could say favorite, you know, but, and now we have this whole thing that has been around for years, sharing conservation, sharing the work y'all do. And it's all because I was able to fall in love with that little girl, you know? And so I do think that like, I always err on the side of empathy just because I get that there's science too. I get that it matters, but even science shows that empathy matters for conservation. Yeah. So yeah, but I would have this conversation every day, all day. I love it. I really do.
It's beautiful to see those connections. And I feel like here at the Nature Center, we have an extra special connection of having only native wildlife. So a lot of the animals that people are seeing are animals that they can see in the wild around here. So they are what we call our wild neighbors. So they feel a stronger sense of connection because there's that sense of place and community as well, to the point where we used to have 2 mountain lions. We don't have any right now, but we used to have 2 cougars, Pisgah and Mitchell, named after the highest peaks around here.
That's so cool.
Oh, they were wonderful. And in 2018, they were brothers. In 2018, Pisgah passed away. And we announced it on social media on a Friday. And the next day, on Saturday, I was out there at the habitat. We were training some docents on that area. And we had so many guests who came to visit just to see Mitchell, the brother, to make sure that he was doing okay. And there were some really beautiful, very sweet moments, and I will not cry.
She's tearing up, y'all. She's tearing up.
But it was so incredible to see the community come out with genuine concern to make sure that this other cougar was okay because of what, and he was, by the way. He ended up being fine.
That's amazing.
But it was just it's so heartwarming.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. And of course, you've teased it, and now you've confused people even more because no, I love it. And for those of you who have been listening for a long time, this is going to be a bit of a recap from something from the first season because I went to the Grave Fossils site. Which
oh, you did?
I did.
Okay.
And but I mean, back then we had a couple hundred downloads a week. Now we have a couple thousand. So for the people who don't know, why are red pandas, which I believe Nepal and China are not in North Carolina,
correct,
considered local native wildlife, you cheaters.
Right? Even the mountain lion would be considered cheating at this point.
True. Sadly true.
So it's true. Yeah. So the WNC Nature Center specializes in animals that are either currently native to the Southern Appalachian Mountain region or what we call historically native. And easy examples of that would be like the cougar, the eastern cougar, or the red wolf. So we have red wolves, and red wolves don't live here anymore. The red panda, you may be wondering, is because the ancestor of the red panda, which is called the Bristol's panda, lived here right around 5 million years ago. So they are our first, but hopefully not our last, prehistoric Appalachian species is what we call them.
Which is one of the coolest things. I love that so much. Have you ever been to Gray?
I've been to Gray many times.
Okay.
We actually have a wonderful relationship with them because they are an active fossil dig site and they have all this incredible technology. They have sent us 3D scans because we have a 3D printer here of the Bristol's panda skulls so that we can print out biofacts and things like that and just general information. When we got our red pandas, they were hugely helpful.
That's so cool. I loved it there so much. Yeah, I got to go behind the scenes, got to see the almost complete Bristol's panda and then the second skull that they have. And for those of you who don't know this, I discovered this at Gray's and it blew my mind because for the longest time, I have seen driving on the highways, there is a red panda U-Haul, which is awesome. It's one of the displays on, they have, each U-Haul has a graphic on it. And there is one that is a red panda and it says Tennessee. And I was never able to get up close enough, I can't look when I'm driving, to read the small printing on it to explain why there is a red panda from Tennessee. And so I got sent by Sarah Glass at Zoo Knoxville, who sent me to Gray's, and she's the Red Panda SSP coordinator.
Yes.
And she's like, just go, you're gonna meet with Wally, and you're going to have your mind blown. I'm like, yes, ma'am. Literally, I'm like, I set it up for the next day, fine. And I went there and I learned all of this, and I hadn't made the connection to the U-Haul. And then as I'm walking through the facility, after we'd gone behind the scenes, Wally's just taking me through the stuff, and there is literally on the wall, the U-Haul. They have the side of the U-Haul artwork there. Oh. And I realized, and I was finally able to read it, and it is because the U-Haul explains that the ancestors of red pandas have been found in North Carolina at Gray Fossil Site. And the actual picture on there is a former panda from Zoo Knoxville to illustrate that.
I love that.
And it makes me so happy. Now, every time I see one of those U-Hauls, I'm like, oh my gosh, not only do I get it, but I got to go and see the thing and do the thing. And so, yeah, I think that's just an amazing place.
Yes. If anyone has a chance to go to the Gray Fossil Site, it's right outside of Johnson City. It's an incredible, and it's a day trip. It's not like a huge, it's not like the North Carolina Zoo, which you've been to the North Carolina Zoo, right? That is a 2-day zoo, easy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I was there earlier this week. I did 2 interviews, and then I had a couple hours to kill at the zoo. And I'm like, oh, this doesn't cut it.
Not enough.
This isn't great. But so that is such a cool thing. Let's talk about your current panda situation.
Sure.
What you got going on?
Gotta talk about the pandas.
Yeah.
So we have 2 red pandas right now. Their names are Leafa and Phoenix. And we like to call this their retirement facility. So Leafa was born in 2009 and Phoenix was born in 2011. So they have had babies. Leafa has had 8 babies altogether, and then I believe 4 of those were with Phoenix. So she's done an excellent job putting her genes into the endangered species gene pool, which is exactly what we want.
Sarah Glass is very proud.
Exactly. Their babies have gone on to have babies, so they are grandparents.
Nice.
And they are now retired from breeding, so there's not really any plans for them to breed in the future. And they are here to have a wonderful, relaxing retirement in Asheville, North Carolina. Like so many others that come here. They came here to retire.
Nice. And how do they get along? How are they the star attraction here? Or do you find that the native wildlife actually gets more attention? I'm curious.
No, that's an excellent question. And it definitely, the star attraction changes. Before the red pandas, I would say the otters, the river otters, hands down, they're just so playful.
They are.
River otters
amazing.
are very active. They're diurnal, so they're more active during the day as opposed to some of our other animals. And then the red pandas came along, and it was definitely a little bit of a running joke of the red pandas are inching in on the river otter territory there for cutest animal at the Nature Center. And so the red pandas, I would say, have been pretty much the top of the, everyone loves a lot of the animals here, but red pandas were very popular. And then last year, we got baby fever. And we, just as a facility as a whole. And we ended up with 7 red wolf puppies. So we had 7 puppies born here.
Oh my gosh.
So and they're still all here. So we have 9 red wolves all together right now. They don't look like puppies anymore. They look like adults because they're a year old.
That's so many though.
So yeah,
That's
we
amazing.
are chock full of red wolves. And
As all of North Carolina should be, by the
as
way.
it should be and isn't.
Yes, I know. We talk about that a lot
Oh, good.
here.
I'm
Yeah.
glad. And then we got 2 coyote puppies.
Wow.
And then we got 2 bobcat kittens. And then we got 2 raccoon kits. And then we have our 2 baby box turtles and our 2 baby snapping turtles. So we just went wild with the babies last year. And I don't think anyone knows what to do with it. Like, I think they're just, we don't know what favorite to have.
Right.
Because there's a lot of cuteness overload going on right now.
That's amazing. Wow. Okay. That's really cool. So we are winding down here, and I'm thrilled to be sharing, the stories from the Nature Center with my fans. I think this place is cool. I am excited to go wander and see turtles and red pandas and all the things. Is there anything else you want to say about this facility, the work that you do, animals, anything?
I think the most important thing that we do here is connecting people with their local wildlife. And because everything here is either native or mostly recently native, with the exception of the red pandas, when you come to the Nature Center, it's a very immersive experience. The entire facility is outdoors with the exception of our reptile building. Because these animals live in this area, we can build their habitats into our natural ecosystem, which makes it a really special experience. You're walking through the mountains, seeing these animals that live around here in the wild. So I highly recommend visiting and making those connections with our wild neighbors.
Absolutely. And we always end with 2 things. Is there any conservation organization that you would like to give a shout out to?
So one conservation organization that we work closely with would be the Red Wolf Coalition.
Okay. Yeah.
And as we mentioned, and I know that you've talked about in other episodes, how important the red wolf is. It's the most endangered canine in the world. And right now, all the ones in the wild live on the coast of North Carolina. And something special that we do, we're actually an eco-cell site. So we recycle old technology here. So you can come, you don't have to pay to come to the Nature Center. You can just go to our front desk anytime that we're open and drop off like old cell phones and tablets and things like that. And all of the proceeds from those materials getting recycled gets donated to the Red Wolf Coalition to support the American red wolf.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. That's good environmentalism in 2 different ways. I like that a lot.
It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show. But there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
Well, poop stories.
Poop story.
They're always good. I teach a whole class just on poop. So this will involve poop and more specifically pee as well.
Great.
One of, I think, the most interesting things about toads, we're coming back to toads, is like all amphibians and reptiles, they are cold-blooded. And so their body temperature is not the same as ours, and it varies. So oftentimes, if you've ever been peed on by a toad or pooped on by a toad, but particularly peed on, one of the weirdest sensations about it is that it's not warm. So... And I don't know what it is that is so disconcerting about being peed on and it not being warm, but it changes the whole experience. So I've been peed on and I've been pooped on by many animals. Possum poop is particularly smelly. Snake poop is absolutely horrendous.
Yes.
Snake poop is foul. Turtle isn't that big of a deal, and it usually just... because we have a lot of terrestrial turtles, so it's in the soil and we don't even know that it's there. But when a toad pees on you while you're holding it for children, and it's like a cool jet of water instead of warm, it rocks your world. It's
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. And actually, I just learned at the North Carolina Zoo that it's not just pee that you're getting at that point in time. There's some reproductive materials in there as well, because that's just kind of how that works sometimes. So yeah. This is the second time I'm learning about toad pee this week.
Yeah.
And I'm both excited about it and questioning my life choices. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's been a blast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
All right, so there you have it, folks. Another lovely episode is in the books, and I hope y'all really enjoyed that one. I did want to share a funny story, one of those, oh, John moments. This one wasn't actually my fault. But okay, so there is a performer who I am friends with. We are, friends on social media. We have each other's phone numbers and have talked about stuff on text and phone calls and such. I have wanted to cast this person in some of my shows, but it's never quite worked out. All of that stuff. Oh, we've even actually performed virtually together on some of Taylor Isaac Gray's videos, at least one of them that we've performed on together, but couldn't be in the same room at the same time to do it. So we've never met. And so this person, who is an incredible singer and an incredible human named Claire Frances Sullivan, reached out to me at one point and was like, hey, I'm going to be gigging in Asheville, North Carolina. And I saw that you're going to be playing in North Carolina. So I thought maybe, there was a chance for us to finally officially meet and like grab coffee or something and be friends. And I was like, oh my gosh, that would be really meaningful to me. So after I finished my gigs in Raleigh, I headed to the WNC Nature Center, which is in Asheville, North Carolina. And I was like, this is so awesome. And so I messaged her and, we had talked and I said I was going to be out that way and doing the interview. So right after the interview, she's like, let's go get coffee. And I was like, amazing. And I was so excited to actually make this friend into like a real friend. And I was like, where do you want to go? And she's like, I found this amazing place. And she said the name of it. And I put it in maps and nothing came up at first. And then eventually it found it in Asheboro, North Carolina. She was in a completely different part of the state and had gotten confused on whether she was in Asheville or Asheboro. And what makes this story even funnier and sadder is the fact that Asheboro is where the North Carolina Zoo is. And I had been there on 2 separate days doing interviews and hanging out. We totally could have met up, but because of the confusion about Asheville and Asheboro, we still have yet to actually meet in person. So thanks for that, North Carolina town naming people. But hey, anyway, I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, and Jenny Owens. And also thank all of you for supporting the pod, whether you're a patron by going to patreon.com/Rossifari or just by listening and telling people about it and being an awesome part of this community. Love you all. So I'll be back on Friday for our Zoo News episode. And until then, remember, friends, the word credits backwards is Steiderk. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.